I still remember the way the sun felt that morning, how its rays slid across the tarmac in shimmering waves, dancing along the wings of the aircraft I had come to call my second home. The smell of jet fuel, the comforting hum of engines, and the camaraderie of my fellow pilots had long been my life's constants. But none of that compared to the hope I carried in my heart, the hope of returning to Lily, the woman I believed was waiting for me, the woman I intended to marry the moment my feet touched American soil. Her letters had sustained me through the most harrowing nights. When the roar of anti-aircraft guns thundered through the cockpit, when the radio crackled with the voices of my superiors urging me to remain calm under unimaginable stress, it was Lily's voice in my mind that reminded me I had a future waiting. A future filled with cozy family dinners, a comfortable home, and, of course, a white dress and vows spoken under a bright sky. She was, I thought, my beacon, the woman who would never betray me, the person who had promised to share my life through thick and thin. Yet, the day I finally stepped off that plane, duffel bags slung over my shoulder, feeling the joyful gravity of returning home after a grueling set of missions overseas, I sensed something was off. Perhaps it was the odd silence when I tried to call her, or maybe it was the way my father avoided eye contact as he picked me up from the base in his aging pickup truck. I couldn't quite put my finger on it then, but a cold shiver ran down my spine. Still, I clung to optimism. I refused to believe the worst until I saw it with my own eyes. I had been saving most of my Air Force pay, carefully stowing away every spare dollar in a joint account Lily and I opened. We had big plans, a wedding, a new home, maybe even a baby in a few years. The anticipation was supposed to culminate in an embrace at the airport, the sweet taste of her lips, and a ring shining on her finger. But there was no ring for me to slip onto her hand. No loving kiss. Not even a simple welcome home. Instead, I learned in the most humiliating way possible that Lily had married another man. Marvin, of all people, using my savings to finance the entire affair. She had vanished from my life with no explanation, leaving only a vacancy in my heart and a smoldering rage in my belly. I confronted her that same afternoon. My father drove me straight to the small apartment building where Lily's friend had said she might be found. When I knocked on that door, my fist trembling with a mixture of fear, sadness, and fury, I half expected Lily to run into my arms and insist there was a misunderstanding. Instead, she opened the door with Marvin standing right behind her. Shock etched itself across my face. My legs nearly gave out, but I steadied myself with sheer will. Lily tried to stammer some pathetic excuse, claiming she didn't know if I was ever coming back. Marvin, with a smug grin, leaned on the doorframe, one arm around her waist, all too aware of the financial windfall they had reaped at my expense. He had the nerve to say, "Things happen," as if my entire existence could be brushed aside like crumbs on a table. That moment stoked a fire inside me. I felt the betrayal in my bones, like an icy lance piercing my chest. I had spent every day out there risking my life, worried not just for my own survival but anxious to get back to her, to build our dream together. And all the while, she had been crafting this treacherous plan. I left without another word, the thunder of my heartbeat louder than any jet engine I had ever heard. The subsequent days blurred into a haze of heartbreak and disbelief. My closest friends, though supportive, could only offer sympathetic claps on the shoulder and a few beers to dull the sting. My father and mother worried themselves sick, asking me how I wanted to proceed, but I had no answers. At first, I sank into a swamp of self-pity. I stayed awake deep into the night replaying her betrayal, hearing Marvin's smug laugh, watching Lily avert her gaze from my pain, as though I were a stranger begging on a street corner. Yet, as the sleepless nights piled up, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet but growing resolve. My training in the Air Force had taught me many things: discipline, resilience, the importance of strategic thinking. I had spent years navigating high-pressure scenarios, carefully planning missions that required pinpoint precision and absolute self-control. Now, that training took on a different purpose. If Lily and Marvin thought they could steal my dreams, laugh in my face, and vanish, they were sorely mistaken. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I decided to employ every skill I had honed to mount a mission of my own, one of quiet, calculated revenge. I didn't want to harm them physically. That would be too crude, too obvious, and quite frankly, not worth the stains on my conscience or the risk to my career. But emotional destruction, financial devastation, public humiliation, that was something I could orchestrate meticulously, leaving them with no path to redemption and nowhere to hide. It began with observation, the simplest yet most crucial stage of any covert operation. I took my father's old car, one not easily recognizable, and parked discreetly near their new house. It wasn't much to look at, just a run-of-the-mill suburban home. The lawn was unkempt, the blinds half-drawn, and the porch light flickered as though the bulb needed changing. I spent hours, days, simply watching. When they left for work, who visited, what packages arrived. I noted their schedules. Lily seemed to work part-time at a local clothing boutique, presumably because she no longer needed a full-time job thanks to the money she'd stolen from me. Marvin, I discovered, had a questionable side hustle. Rumor had it he was dabbling in some shady financial practices, possibly skirting the law. A neighbor mentioned seeing a string of clients dropping by at odd hours, leaving with anxious looks on their faces. Something about the situation told me I'd hit a goldmine of potential leverage. Gathering intelligence was the second phase. I installed a small, discreet camera system in a tree near their backyard. Nothing too invasive, it couldn't see inside the house, but it gave me a vantage point of who was coming and going, capturing license plates, times, and faces. I recorded every snippet of conversation I could pick up from outside their open windows, every suspicious handshake that occurred in broad daylight. It was all stored on a secure drive, carefully organized with timestamps and notes. With each new piece of evidence, my anger simmered, but I kept it controlled. This was my mission now, the single target of my focus. I found records indicating Marvin had opened multiple lines of credit in Lily's name, that he was funneling money to offshore accounts, probably using some of the leftover funds Lily had taken from me. The more I dug, the clearer it became that Lily, naive though she could be, had signed up for more than just a wedding. She had tethered herself to a con artist, a man who might eventually betray her even more viciously than she had betrayed me. I recall one moment distinctly. I sat in my cramped car late at night, rewatching footage of Marvin speaking to a nervous man in a cheap suit. The camera's audio wasn't pristine, but I could catch phrases like interest rates, no paper trail, under the table. Marvin was practically painting a target on his own back. My heartbeat quickened. I knew that, if I played my cards right, I wouldn't just ruin their finances. I could bring the wrath of law enforcement down upon them. Yet I wanted to be thorough. Revenge, as I had learned, is best served cold and methodically. So I bided my time, continuing my quiet surveillance. I followed Lily to the boutique, noting how she chatted with coworkers who seemed oblivious to her real nature. She wore the ring Marvin had bought with my money. Ironically, a ring meant to symbolize devotion and love, but which now symbolized only deception to me. Each time I saw it glitter on her hand, I thought of the dog tags I had worn with pride, the sweat and tears shed in service of my country, all while she was orchestrating this fiasco behind my back. Eventually, I assembled enough evidence to create a bombshell portfolio. It contained photographs, video stills, notes on Marvin's suspicious dealings, and the timeline of Lily's involvement, including financial statements showing the withdrawals from our joint account, the exact amount used to finance their wedding, and the subsequent use of those funds in Marvin's questionable ventures. With all of that, I could have gone straight to the authorities. But I wanted something more spectacular, something that would expose them publicly, ensuring the entire community saw the truth of their character. The perfect opportunity arrived when Lily and Marvin decided to throw a housewarming party, an event they planned to host for their new neighbors, co-workers, and a handful of old friends. I found out about it through Lily's social media post. Yes, she was bold enough to keep me as a friend on social media, probably out of arrogance that I wouldn't act. The post boasted about their new home, inviting anyone who wanted to celebrate love and fresh starts. Couldn't resist. This was where I would ignite the final stage of my revenge. I planned meticulously. First, I ensured that certain people received anonymous emails containing snippets of the evidence. people like Lily's boss at the boutique, Marvin's shady clients, and even a local investigative journalist who thrived on stories of corruption. Next, I arranged for my own quiet entrance at the party. I prepared a small projector and a hidden speaker system that would play some of the most incriminating clips. If I was going to deliver my retribution, I wanted to do it in style. When the day of the housewarming arrived, I dressed inconspicuously, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over my face. I parked a few blocks away to avoid arousing suspicion. With the crowd gathered in the modest living room, I could see Lily playing the perfect hostess, offering drinks and forced smiles, while Marvin boasted about business successes that were anything but legitimate. I slipped into a side corridor during a moment of distraction, hooking up my projector to a power outlet. Technology had been my ally for many years, first in the cockpit, and now in the realm of domestic warfare. With one tap on my phone, the living room TV screen went dark, and the projector whirred to life, casting footage on the bare wall behind the buffet table. At first, people were confused. Some craned their necks, some laughed nervously, and Lily, sensing something was amiss, rushed toward the source. Then the audio kicked in. Marvin's voice, captured crystal clear from my strategic vantage points. Everyone heard him talk about siphoning money, forging documents, and his dismissive remarks about Lily being nothing more than a convenient partner. The crowd fell silent, jaws dropping in shock and horror. Lily turned white as a sheet, eyes wide, her entire body trembling. Marvin tried to rip the projector from the wall, but I was quicker. I stepped into view, the baseball cap now tucked in my back pocket, and faced them all. Lily's eyes locked with mine, tears threatening to spill. Marvin's face twisted in anger, but he was like a cornered animal, all bravado gone. "In case you're all wondering," I said calmly, "I'm the man Lily was engaged to while I was risking my life overseas. I came home to find out they'd used my money to finance this fairy tale. But as you can see, it's anything but a fairy tale. I suggest all of you who have dealings with Marvin cut ties now if you value your integrity or your freedom." The ensuing chaos was everything I had envisioned. Guests shouted in disbelief. Lily's boss, who had received my anonymous email, stormed out, vowing to fire her first thing Monday morning. Marvin's clients gaped at each other in alarm, some already calling their lawyers. A few neighbors even picked up their coats and purses and hurried out, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. And there stood Lily, tears streaming down her cheeks, trying to explain that she didn't know Marvin was that corrupt, that she had married him because she felt lost, that she thought I'd never return. Her excuses rang hollow. She had made her bed with a thief, and now the entire neighborhood saw her for who she really was. A woman who traded loyalty for quick gain, only to lose everything in the process. The police arrived soon afterward, alerted by concerned neighbors who heard the uproar. I had expected this, because in addition to tipping off the journalist and Lily's boss, I had shared the incriminating financial files with law enforcement. The officers scanned the crowd and locked eyes on Marvin, who was shouting profanities and hurling threats. They arrested him on the spot for suspected fraud and money laundering. Lily, sobbing, tried to cling to him, but he pushed her away, spitting vile accusations that she was the one who had led him astray. The scene was a perfect storm of humiliation, and it was precisely what I had orchestrated. By the time the dust settled, Lily stood there, alone in a ruined dress, mascara streaking her cheeks. Her once pristine living room was littered with half-eaten snacks, toppled furniture, and shattered illusions. I left quietly, slipping away before the police could question me extensively. I had acted within the limits of the law, merely unveiling the truth. If anyone had questions, I was prepared, but I didn't need to linger. My work there was done. In the following days, the fallout was swift and merciless. Marvin faced multiple charges, some of which carried serious prison time. Lily found herself ostracized. Without her part-time job, without friends willing to shelter her, she was left to bear the consequences of her deceit in isolation. The housewarming had turned into a public unmasking, and everyone who witnessed it spread the story far and wide. Strangely enough, though I had engineered their downfall, I felt a pang of something akin to pity. My anger had been righteous, my actions well-planned. But the quiet emptiness that followed victory was a sharp reminder that revenge, while sometimes necessary, can also leave a bitter taste. Yet, in the end, I felt a calm settle over me. I hadn't stooped to violence. I had remained strategic and controlled, using my training for a cause that felt just. In the weeks that followed, I returned to my normal life. My superiors at the Air Force Base, having heard vague rumors, asked if I was okay. I responded that I was better than I'd been in a long time. My father, who was initially worried I would do something rash, breathed a sigh of relief when he realized I had taken the path of lawful, albeit dramatic, retribution. My mother, sweet as ever, simply hugged me and said she was proud I hadn't let vengeance poison my soul, that I'd found a method to let justice speak for me. Even so, the emotional wounds took time to heal. Some nights, I lay awake thinking about the way Lily had smiled at me in old photographs, how we had once shared silly jokes over cheap pizza and worn matching dog tags when I first enlisted. I recalled the times we dreamed of a little house near the base, maybe a golden retriever running around in the yard. All of it gone in a torrent of betrayal. But life moves forward. I couldn't remain stuck in the past, haunted by a lost future. One afternoon, after a routine training flight, I found myself at a small coffee shop just off base. That's where I met Jillian, a nurse who worked at the local VA hospital. She was there sipping coffee, reading a thick medical textbook. Our conversation started innocently. She asked about my uniform, I asked about her book, and it slowly blossomed into a genuine connection. She was warm, kind, and grounded. Over time, we discovered that we had both endured heartbreak in different ways, yet we still held hope that good people existed in the world. Dating Jillian was like learning to trust again, step by cautious step. She listened intently to my story when I finally mustered the courage to share it. Rather than recoil at my tale of revenge, she squeezed my hand and said she admired that I'd kept my sense of honor, that I'd sought justice without violence. Over the months, we built a friendship and love so solid it made me see how fragile my past relationship had been in comparison. Meanwhile, Lily's life continued to unravel. Mutual acquaintances told me she had filed for divorce from Marvin shortly after his arrest. With her reputation in tatters, she struggled to find any stability. A part of me wanted to ignore the updates to remain unaffected, but we shared history, painful though it was. I listened with a mix of remorse and closure. I felt no desire to rescue her. She had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. When Jillian got a new job offer in a different city, I was at a crossroads. I had the option to take an instructor role at my base or follow her and transfer to another post. In a heartfelt conversation, we agreed to face the next step together. We moved to a quiet neighborhood near her new hospital, renting a modest apartment as we planned our future. We spent evenings cooking simple meals, dancing in the kitchen to the old rock tunes that crackled on a battered radio, and dreaming up adventures that had nothing to do with betrayal or revenge. Soon enough, I found an opportunity at a local Air National Guard unit, where I could continue my service while supporting Jillian's new endeavor. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm, a stark contrast to the chaos I had left behind. I occasionally heard through the grapevine that Lily was still drifting, jobless and alone, while Marvin's trial date approached. No doubt he would spend a good stretch of time behind bars. A year passed, each day bringing me a deeper sense of gratitude. Then, on a balmy summer evening, Jillian and I took a walk by the lake near our apartment. The water reflected the golden hue of the setting sun, the horizon ablaze with reds and pinks. As the gentle breeze tousled her hair, I knelt down and asked her to marry me. It was a simple question, posed without elaborate fanfare. And yet, in that moment, I felt my heart hammer in my chest, fear and excitement coiling into one. Because this time, I wanted to be sure. This time, I wanted a bond built on mutual respect and genuine devotion. She said yes, tears shining in her eyes. We embraced, and for the first time in years, I felt unequivocally free of the pain Lily had inflicted. The noise of betrayal and revenge had finally faded into the background, replaced by the warmth of genuine love and a future I could trust. Word of my engagement must have circulated back to Lily somehow, because I received an unexpected letter from her. In shaky handwriting, she apologized for everything, admitting she never should have doubted my return, never should have stolen the money, and that she regretted it every single day. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She knew better than that, but she expressed a hope that I had found happiness. Reading her letter, I felt a twist of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to tear it up and discard it without a second glance, but I realized her confession was likely a step toward her own redemption, a chance for her to face the ghosts she'd created. I wrote back a single sentence: "I have found peace, and I hope someday you do as well." With that, I sealed the letter and moved on. I had no illusions that Lily and I would ever be friends, but releasing that anger was my final act of triumph. My revenge had already been served, and now, my heart was too full of new beginnings to harbor any more darkness. Preparations for my wedding with Jillian were surprisingly smooth. We opted for a small ceremony by the lake, surrounded by just family and close friends. The dress she chose was simple but elegant, and I wore a traditional Air Force mess dress uniform, feeling proud of my service and the life I had rebuilt. My father stood by my side, giving me a reassuring pat on the shoulder, while my mother dabbed her eyes repeatedly. When Jillian walked down the makeshift aisle, the late afternoon sunlight framing her silhouette in golden light, I realized that every hardship I had endured was leading to this. My heart pounded with a love so profound, I could scarcely breathe. She smiled at me, an unguarded, genuine smile that spoke of unconditional support and honesty. We exchanged vows, ours not only words of romantic promise but a declaration of mutual respect born from shared hardships and a willingness to grow together. The ceremony ended with a gentle kiss, sealing the bond we had nurtured carefully, and the guests erupted into applause. For a moment, I glanced at the horizon, remembering how I used to stare at distant clouds when I was deployed, longing for home. Now home was here, in Jillian's hand wrapped firmly around mine. I closed my eyes, letting gratitude pour through me. The wedding reception was an intimate gathering of laughter, heartfelt toasts, and renewed hope. My commanding officer dropped by, congratulating me with a stern handshake. A few fellow pilots teased me about finally landing the perfect flight path. My father gave a speech, recounting the days when I was just a boy dreaming of the sky. My mother kissed my cheek and whispered that she had never seen me so happy. And Jillian's parents welcomed me with open arms, forging a new family bond that felt as sturdy as any fortress. As the sun set on that perfect day, Jillian and I stole a moment alone by the water's edge. The faint sound of our loved ones chattering behind us made the air feel warm and safe. I looked into her eyes and remembered the lonely nights in that surveillance car, the bitterness of betrayal burning my throat. I recalled how I felt unstoppable rage and a relentless need to prove that Lily and Marvin couldn't just walk away with my life savings, my trust, and my pride. And here I was, on the other side of it all, a man wiser for the heartbreak, stronger for the trials, and immeasurably happier for finding a love that was real. Jillian pressed her hand against my cheek, as though sensing the swirl of thoughts in my head. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough to remind me that while revenge might feel like the endgame, what truly matters is the life you build after you've settled your debts with the past. In that quiet moment, I kissed her softly and whispered, "Thank you for saving me from who I might have become." She smiled, a tear slipping from the corner of her eye. We joined hands again, turning back to our family and friends, stepping forward into a future unburdened by bitterness and betrayal. Sometimes, life demands that we face incredible hardships and dark betrayals to truly appreciate the warmth of genuine love and personal triumph. My story ended with the punishment of those who had wronged me. Lily and Marvin reaped the consequences of their actions, facing public humiliation, legal repercussions, and the collapse of their relationship. Yet, I emerged from the storm a better version of myself, grounded in the knowledge that real justice is served best when it's tempered by restraint and delivered with methodical precision. And so, under the amber glow of that lakeside sunset, I stepped into a new chapter, hand in hand with a woman who looked at me with trust instead of treachery. The ghosts of betrayal might never vanish completely, but they no longer dictated my fate. I had chosen to find peace, to let love conquer the bitterness that could have consumed me. In that choice, I found not just revenge, but true redemption, and a happily ever after that Lily and Marvin could never tarnish.